Sound Mental Health as an organization is undeniably the perpetrators of a mouth poison crime, a heart poison crime, and a deliberate attempt to chemically castrate me that resulted in diabetes. They hid their administration's involvement with a man who perpetrated the criminal targeting of a neuroplasm in my head that they had implanted to aid and abet an arrested museum thief named John Schulman, whose syndicate includes very powerful warlords from Warhol Museum, with whom Sound Mental Health is in collaboration. They murdered an innocent bystander over a penny and are now claiming that a girl who was at the clubhouse mysteriously died, but there's no, sign that it really happened. We don't know. They're also trying to encroach this buddy-buddy system after insulting the intelligence of the entire world. The photograph that surfaced of me as a young person clarifies the horror, brutality, and trauma that I was in through a prolonged and horrifying ideal that I have testified to, and which science has borne out in examining my eyes and the neuroplasm that they impacted. Horrifying acts of torture. All being backed up by a right-wing Christian crusader group from corrections who kidnapped me in order to claim that I owed lifelong community service. These terrifying, criminal, and deranged acts are underscored by our system of government that now has callously allowed a geriatricide, the elimination of hundreds of thousands of elderly people, primarily. And the grim warning that came by way of the assassination of the Kennedys also seems to be behind the murder of Joe Biden's first wife. At the time, I got a mysterious phone call from Gail Burston on behalf of someone named Donald Finnegan, who was threatening me too at the time, about Jim Croce dying in a car accident. And I was in such a state of trauma that the voices came from far away. They called me when Roberto Clemente died. So, to identify the rule of the word Curtis, Curtis Hunter was the man who claimed to trace a VW in which I was kidnapped, morally, as a child in trauma, by adults who were criminally insane pedophiles involved in child pornography cinema, working with George Romero. To me, as someone who was in terrible fright at the scene of the crime, which was probably organized the people who heisted the car on the movie set were friends of the person who owned the car, and it was very easy for them to talk to Curtis and get the carjacking all set up. And the carjacking system, which was intended to perpetrate this colossal burglary involving our national estate. And Curtis was also the street name in which they implanted the nerve agent. So since we've identified that they're using named signifiers, it's important to look at the Curtis signifier in the event that there's a chain of purpose, much as they used Ronnie and Casper for Reagan and Weinberger, and a set of Donalds, going back to Donald Gruber, which is part of the name Schlickel-Gruber, which was Hitler's original name. So in order to understand this Christian crusade perpetrator group who demand community service essentially from a slave who they neurotraumatized, a golem, we need to identify that this Christian correction system was involved in a car show, as Tony Servi of Curtis said he was going to take me to a car show before I was kidnapped and tortured. This is all part of a car show. And essentially, we need to ask the question, is Joe Biden the salesman for the Christian Community Service cartel that axed his first wife, or is he simply at a loss for what to do? For me, it's clear that I'm at a loss for what to do. It's criminally insane to suggest that I would broker my own father's memory, a naval lieutenant who Yoko Ono had enough power not only to murder, but to put her name on the rear side of his obituary as an encryption on behalf of the people who have clearly been identified as the perpetrators of AIDS, COVID, the mouth poison, the administration in Seattle, these so-called correction thuggies who've networked everything and think that they are the magnificent insight into Christian equity throughout the land. One of the things we need to do is make clear that this has happened, that the Green Party intelligence system is using the idea of racial struggle in order to get over on us with these terrifying attacks, saying they're just removing some of the excess population without actually saying it in order to build an ark. And they made the ridiculous claim that I had morally put my own name on it. Underwriting this is the fact that I played into their human trafficking syndicate. We see from their R18 channel that they made a mockery that people who were on high for them, be it Donald Trump, would say, oh, this one's going deep undercover, ha 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 ha. And then they hijinks, as my sister would say, out-harness that by saying, but you had the script all along. You didn't need to do it that way. You were being subjected to successive degradations of the X motive. That's their language. That's their material concept. That's the way they operate. They leer and they snivel and they contract attack prostitutes and they defame. They say if you get married, you die, because once you're marked by them for human trafficking, you owe them the community service of your sexual identity. We must, in my opinion, bar sexually scurrilous discussions of people's privacy from politics, bar people from having access to the private home. We're dealing with the criminally insane, and they have tremendous cyber stalking powers.